So I was flying up, heading up to Syracuse a couple of weeks ago, and the gentleman I was flying with, really nice guy, and we were flying a really nice Bonanza plane, which is his own personal plane, and I was just asking a ton of questions from a guy he's been flying for close to 35 years, so I was picking his brain. And one of the things that he had shared with me was the instruments on the panel. And I'm asking, what does that mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? How's this work? How's that work? I mean, I want to learn it all, which is another lesson for some other day. But one of the things that he had pointed out to me was, he said, look, do you think, and we were flying in cloudy weather. It was a little bumpy. It was actually kind of scary. Very bumpy, and the kind of the wind is swaying you back and forth a little bit. And I was just dying to get out of those clouds and just get above them. So it was kind of exciting, but nerve-wracking as well. And I'm just thankful that I was flying with a very seasoned guy. But I said to him, I said, look, what is that gadget there on the left? And I'd never seen that gadget before in some of the other older model planes that I've been practicing in. And he says, well, that's the gadget that tells you about crosswinds. And I knew I'd heard that word before, but I really didn't understand it completely. And I began to ask him, what are crosswinds and how does that affect your flight and the direction that you're going in? And he says, well, take a look out the window. And does it seem as if we're flying straight? And I said, yeah, it looks as if we're flying straight. I mean, based on the radar that I'm looking at and based on the flight plan, it looks as if we're flying straight. Now, we couldn't tell because it was so cloudy. We had nothing really yet to look on. Even when we had clearance to be able to see the ground, the point he made was still very obvious, and it was very evident once we cleared the clouds. But he says, it may appear as if we're going, all indications appear as if we're going straight, right? I said, yeah, it looks to me like we're going straight. Then he told me, he held my hand up and he said, hold your hand and watch what I'm going to do to your hand. And he said, move straight. And he pushed my hand to the right. He said, continue moving straight, moving forward, your hands forward, like trying to extend your hand. And he kept subtly pushing my hand to the right. And he says, but continue moving forward. And it turns out, it was very interesting, my hand continued as I was extending my arm in a straightforward pattern. I knew that I was going straight. My arm was going straight. My hand was moving straight in front of me. But those subtle little pushes that he was giving me from his hand to my hand, from left to right, was pushing me off my course. So even though my hand was extending straight, and I eventually would have extended my arm and I would have got my arm and my hand right in front of me, it would have probably been, had he continued to push that without me making adjustments, off to the right. Let me repeat that. If my hand had continued to extend itself straight forward without any pushing from him, I would have had a straight angle of reach, let's say 12 o'clock, right in front of me. But his little subtle pushes to my hand from left to right, my arm, by the time that it extended and my hand was way out in front of me, I was at 2 o'clock. And he says to me, he said, that's the power of a crosswind. They're subtle, unless they're massive, and you would absolutely know that it's massive, and most of the times you wouldn't fly in that kind of stuff anyway. You wouldn't be allowed to, or you shouldn't be. You wouldn't be smart enough or dumb enough to fly in them. Rather, you would be smart enough not to fly. But his point was those subtle winds, 40, 50 knots, those subtle winds can take you subtly off course. So you think you're heading in the right direction. It appears you're heading in the right direction. You're moving forward. You're not going up. You're not going down. You're not doing sideways. You're not doing any of that stuff. So in your mind, it appears that you're going forward, but those crosswinds, without the right instruments and the right awareness, let me repeat that again, without the right instruments and the right awareness, can lead you so far off course that by the time you arrive there, wherever you're heading, you're nowhere near where you thought you would be by that time, and it causes you to have massive correction, which causes delays, frustrations, and a whole host of other issues that can come along the way just because you didn't pay attention to, as he said, the crosswinds. And I thought to myself, that is a powerful learning lesson that can be applied to anything in life. When you're heading in a direction, specifically in business, guys, right? We're all trying to be business entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs in whatever business that you're in. It doesn't matter. You chart the course to where you want to go one day, right? Where you want to land one day, where you perceive to be your place of destination one day. And you do all the right things. Seemingly, you do all the right things, right? You check all the instruments, you check the panel, you check all the things we check before we do on pre-flight. That's what we do, and that's what you do, right? That's what we all do, right? We get our mental game on, we get our game plan, our goals, we do all the things we're supposed to do, and then we make our phone calls, and we go see our people, and we make the appointments, and we do all of these things that provide for us indicators that we're on the right track. And we feel pretty good that we're flying the correct pattern and we're going to arrive. But along the way, it's those crosswinds, those subtle crosswinds that take us off course. So we find that, number one, we're not there as soon as we would have wanted to have been there. In other words, we should have arrived at that place, that destination at a certain time. But because those crosswinds took us off course, we end up arriving, if ever, way later than we would have wanted to.